Every Canadian we lost to this virus will be remembered. Every shift done by a frontline nurse, every mask made by a Canadian worker will not be forgotten.
Tonight, it's been 1 year to the day that the World Health Organization called the COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic.
This special report emerges from our concern that deaths of young children due to maltreatment continue to be a serious concern in our province 15 years after the death of Phoenix Sinclair.
And it's been 15 years since Phoenix Sinclair was killed. The Manitoba Children's Advocate says not much has changed.
We have an enormous amount of community members that show up at Resilience as volunteers, show up to donate clothes, to donate food.
And in Montreal, an injection of federal dollars has advocates for the homeless looking toward better times. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. We begin in Ottawa, where the pros and cons of the proposed UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples legislation was debated today. Known as Bill C-15, it was introduced in December, and the fear is it may die in the face of a possible spring election. But as Jamie Pashagumskam reports, there are Indigenous groups who would be okay if it never gets passed.
The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, or UNDRIP, is frequently seen as the benchmark for governments to address the wrongs of colonialism. But during a parliamentary committee, Arnie Bellis of the Indigenous Research Network says UNDRIP is a roadblock to development.
The UNDRIP situation is already starting to cost investors a bit, and we need to concern ourselves with that if we want to make ourselves a viable group to invest in.
The Research Network, who lobbies for Indigenous interests in the resource sector, spoke to investors' concerns.
C-15 is one more thing that adds to risk because it isn't clear what consent requires. Is it a BCR? Is it a referendum? Who is a representative institution? Is it hereditary chiefs? Is it band council? Is it any member of a nation? All these things just make it riskier for capital. And so we did hear that, it's very difficult to invest on Indigenous territory because it's very risky.
Other criticisms of C-15 state it could have a negative effect on Indigenous sovereignty. But a recent open letter signed by 37 First Nations and over 100 human rights supporters says the law needs to be adopted pronto. Grand Chief of the Grand Council of the Crees, Abel Bosom, is one of the signatories. He says Canada needs to stop stalling.
It's time to be fearless and go beyond what we are accustomed to. There are other Indigenous people around the world who are watching and hoping, anticipating to see that Canada would set a standard for the world.
APTN's Todd Lamoran spoke with Justice Minister David Lametti last month on what the holdup is. Lametti blames the Conservative Party.
Honestly, we need to call out Aaron O'Toole and we need to call out the Conservative Party because their delay tactics are becoming unbearable. We're losing time on a lot of good pieces of legislation, and as I said, we've already spent more time on this than we would have on a budget, and we're just hearing the same arguments over and over again.
Lametti's office told APTN they're not interested in an election and want to get C-15 moving through the parliamentary process and onto royal assent. How many people even want to make it happen remains to be seen. Jamie Pashagumskam, APTN National News, Ottawa.
It's been 1 year since the COVID-19 pandemic changed everything. Justin Trudeau addressed the House of Commons today to mark it as a special day of observance. A moment of silence was held in the afternoon to remember the sacrifices made and the lives lost.
This is where we find meaning in the depths of grief. This is our light through a dark time. Every Canadian we lost to this virus will be remembered. Every shift done by a frontline nurse, every mask made by a Canadian worker will not be forgotten. We are stronger together, today, tomorrow, and always.
The National Day of Observance for people who have died of COVID-19 was marked in a number of places today, including Nunavut's seat of government. Flags in front of the Nunavut Legislative Assembly were at half-mast today to mark the occasion. There have been 381 cases of COVID-19 in Nunavut to date, and 5 Nunavummiut have died due to the virus. Nunavut's Chief Public Health Officer knows it has been a long year.
Yeah, for all kinds of people, it's been a really busy year and a long year with lots of ups and downs. We know of 5 Nunavummiut have died from this, and so that's families that have lost a loved one. Condolences to them. As for the rest of it, we'll continue to work on it and make progress where we can.
To Manitoba now, where a new report from the Advocate for Children and Youth was released today. It looks at the progress the provincial government has made on implementing the 62 recommendations from the Phoenix Sinclair inquiry. It's been 15 years since the 5-year-old died after being beaten and abused by her mother and stepfather. Since then, the death of children due to maltreatment has continued. Brittany Hobson has more.
The lives of 19 children under the age of 5 are the subject of a new report from the Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth. Between 2008 and 2020, these children died after being maltreated. The 64-page document examines what has been done since the death of Phoenix Sinclair, who faced a similar fate in 2005.
This special report emerges from our concern that deaths of young children due to maltreatment continue to be a serious concern in our province 15 years after the death of Phoenix Sinclair and 7 years after the end of the public inquiry into her life and maltreatment death.
Acting Advocate Ainsley Crone says the province has been slow to enact the 62 recommendations that came out of the inquiry. Since 2014, the province has fulfilled 55% of the recommendations. Crone says while this is a significant number, little has been done to support families when they need it most.
A lot of work has happened at that larger level, the systemic level, big structural system changes, but that progress remains really slow on the changes that have a direct impact on families and on children.
In the report, Crone makes 5 additional recommendations. She emphasized the need for more family supports after kids are reunited with their parents. In 5 out of the 19 cases, children were returned and the families received no additional assistance.
Sometimes reunification is seen as the end of a process as opposed to the beginning of a new dynamic in the family.
Kendra Inglis knows the importance of having wraparound services for families. She is the director of Macoun Transition, an organization that offers living arrangements for families and children transitioning out of the welfare system. Her team offers around-the-clock support.
Being able to have that staff available to them 24 hours a day is definitely lowering the risk of abuse and neglect, and a parent just feeling completely defeated because they're not doing this alone.
Crone says the province needs to move quick on implementing the rest of the recommendations. If they continue at the pace they are at now, it'll be 2028 before all are completed.
While we're waiting for those changes to be enacted, there are little ones who are growing up and who are not always safe in their environments. And so the sooner that those changes can be made and others, the safer that children are going to be in our communities.
Families Minister Rochelle Squires says she will provide an update to the Advocate's office in 6 months. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Time now to step aside for a quick break. Coming up, welcome news for the homeless and advocates in Montreal.
Moving into this new building is going to be incredible. Receiving all this support from the municipal, provincial, federal, community levels is amazing.
Welcome back. Well, as you know, we're 1 year into the COVID-19 pandemic, and homeless shelters across the country are still struggling to meet demand. But in what's being called a historic move this week, Canada matched the multi-million-dollar investment made by Quebec to secure a permanent shelter space for First Nations and Inuit living in Montreal. Lindsay Richardson has that story.
When this downtown drop-in center opened in November 2019, they chose the name Resilience Montreal. And resilient it is.
We have an enormous amount of community members that show up at Resilience as volunteers, show up to donate clothes, to donate food. It's pretty much across Montreal that people come in on a regular basis, and that is what makes Resilience.
The COVID-19 pandemic put a stop to in-person services in 2020, but Resilience's future was always uncertain.
Luxury condos are going up all over the neighborhood, and Resilience's current shelter space is set to be torn down.
Then last week came relief.
On devait agir, il y avait urgence d'agir.
Quebec kicked in over $3 million for Resilience to buy a permanent space and put down roots near Cabot Square, a downtown Indigenous hub with a growing list of needs.
On a vu récemment qu'il y a eu une augmentation des gestes de violence sur place, une augmentation de problèmes de consommation, même eu décès.
Then this week came another $3 million from Canada.
What we know about Canada is more than half of the Indigenous population live off reserve. These are false categories that, in particular, COVID doesn't really care about. And we know in terms of the money that we're deploying today that this is very much top of mind when we see the impact of COVID has had and really drawn to the fore the importance of ensuring that urban Indigenous realities are reflected.
Funding and constructing a shelter specifically for the urban Indigenous population of Montreal were calls to action number 99 and 100 of the Vienne Commission report. But actually making it happen is a massive undertaking. Most of the construction will be done pro bono. And even with investments from the City of Montreal, the province, and now the feds, Nakiset says it may take an additional $1 million just to get the shelter staffed and up and running for the first year.
Although this money is incredible to create the building, we need to also have operations.
For now, its new possible location is being kept secret, in part to avoid complaints from residents.
But the street community has complaints too. They're repeatedly ticketed by police. COVID times have worsened food insecurity and sexual assault issues. The problems are well known. And in what Nakiset calls a historic move, 3 governments are now pitching in to find solutions.
Moving into this new building is going to be incredible. Receiving all this support from the municipal, provincial, federal, community levels is amazing. I bet right now at Resilience Montreal, they are just cheering, right? So like you've done a really good deed, and we're gonna make something really special out of this. So thank you very much.
Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
The old saying, some people's trash is other people's treasure, couldn't be more true in this next story about a lost headdress. APTN's Tina House explains.
It all started when Harry Warner came to this garbage bin to look for bottles. But this time, he found something with much more significance.
I saw a bag in here, so I just seen a feather sticking out of it, and I grabbed the bag.
And what Warner found was this headdress. But who did it belong to? He says he brought it back home to his roommate, and they decided to post on Facebook to find the owner.
So many people wanted to claim it was theirs. There was people that were telling me that it's theirs, and we told them if you can give us a description, what it is, what are all on it, what was used to thread with it. But a lot of them came up with nothing. They didn't have pictures.
Ron Baker's niece in northern BC saw the post and called her family after she recognized that it had belonged to the late Kotlacha, Chief Simon Baker of the Squamish Nation. He had given it to his son Ron, but Ron says it had been stolen about 15 years ago from the Aboriginal Friendship Center.
When I was looking at the picture on Facebook, and I'm looking across my living room at my pictures, and I go, hey, that's my address.
After verifying Ron Baker as the rightful owner, a repatriation ceremony was organized to return it. Ron's sister, Faye Hulls, says she's so happy the headdress is finally home.
I really wish these feathers could talk about the journey where it's been in the last 15 years or so, because it's in perfect condition. Whoever had it respected it and looked after it.
Faye says this isn't the first time things have returned to the family. These carvings were found in an antique store that their dad had carved in the 1940s. And this basket is one of 9 that was returned to them after meeting someone who had them at an art show in Santa Fe, New Mexico. What else is remarkable is that the dumpster where the headdress was found was only a half a block away from where Faye and Ron live. And as Faye puts the sacred headdress on her brother, Ron explains what it's like to be reunited with this precious gift from his late father.
Every time you put a headdress on, it just gives you an overwhelming feeling. All the troubles go away. You're in your own world and you're showing your own power.
Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
What a great story. And that grass is very green already in Vancouver. Time for one more quick break. Still to come, we get a look at the latest episode of APTN Investigates.
January 7th, the first year of the raid that happened here at Gittenden Checkpoint, the RCMP came. There was between 50 and 100 with lethal overwatch, attack dogs, sniper rifles, militarized RCMP.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And it's Throwback Thursday for this photo from Rob Belly. It was actually taken in 2015 during a cultural camp on the Lucky Man First Nation in Saskatchewan. Beautiful picture indeed. And with vaccine rollouts and improved conditions, hopefully we'll soon see the return of such gatherings and images. You can keep those pictures coming by sending them to share@aptn.ca. for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a peek at what tomorrow's weather forecast is looking like. Starting on the east coast, 14 above with showers for Halifax, +5 and rain in St. John's, -23 for Inukjuak, 4 below in Nain. +4 for Montreal, -1 in Chibougamau with snow, 10 above with showers for Toronto, +5 in Sault Ste. Marie. -2 in Thunder Bay, sunny and 4 below for Sioux Lookout. -5 in Thompson and God's Lake. +4 and sunny for Winnipeg and Brandon. +7 in Regina, 2 above in Saskatoon. 5 with showers for Meadow Lake, -5 for Uranium City. In northern Alberta, +4 for Fort McMurray, 7 in Grand Prairie. 11 above for Medicine Hat and Calgary, sunny and 12 in Lethbridge. 12 for Vancouver, 11 in Kamloops and Victoria. +7 for Prince George and Smithers. -19 in Old Crow, snow and 9 below for Whitehorse. -15 for Yellowknife, snow and 19 below in Norman Wells. -20 for Sax Harbor and Inuvik, -17 in Colville Lake. 29 below for Baker Lake and Chesterfield. -25 in Resolute and Igloo Lake. The new episode of Nation to Nation is just a matter of minutes away. Here's host Todd Lamoran with who he'll have on the show.
Tonight, we'll have a follow-up to last week's show. Child advocate Autumn Windigo was under the threat of banishment from the community she's living in, all because she criticized the child welfare system in Treaty 3. Last week, we spoke to her lawyer, but tonight, we speak to Ms. Windigo herself, who shows a lot of bravery to go public while under the threat of exile. As well, I speak to the new executive director of the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation. Stephanie Scott wants to find out where more than 4,000 missing residential school students are and give their families closure. That's coming up right after the national news. I'll see you then.
Looks good. Todd's going to be up in about 5 minutes' time. Indigenous land struggles have a strong basis in history and treaty rights. Tomorrow on APTN Investigates, Rob Smith examines how the law meets the land. Here's a preview of Down the Barrel.
Namox and Medik, two high-ranking chiefs in the Wet'suwet'en hereditary system. Over the last 5 years, Coastal GasLink has been pushing to build a pipeline through the Wet'suwet'en territory in British Columbia. Today, the chiefs are back at the scene of what they call an invasion.
It was so disheartening to see all this take place. But there's not a damn thing we can do about it, because that injunction that they had was, to give them the right to do that. But we didn't give them any authority to be on our territory.
In an era of reconciliation, with a history of Indigenous court wins in Canada, how did it come to this? A police raid in 2020.
It feeds all the territories all the way down to the ocean.
Another raid the year before. Slato is the spokesperson at the Gitumdon checkpoint.
On January 7th, the first year of the raid that happened here at Gitumdon checkpoint, the RCMP came. There was between 50 and 100 with lethal overwatch, attack dogs, sniper rifles, militarized RCMP.
You can catch that entire episode of APTN Investigates right here tomorrow night after the APTN National News. To the UK now, where flashes of bright light lit up Britain's night sky as a meteor was spotted soaring through the clear night. Stargazers were left amazed by the phenomenon, which was dubbed a fireball by the UK Meteor Network. The group of astronomers operate a network of detection cameras that monitor the sky and record meteor activity. Dozens of people shared videos to social media. Seems like there's been a lot of meteors lately. The world's largest sled dog race is underway in Alaska. COVID-19 is, of course, impacting this year's Iditarod. Organizers shortened the course to just under 1,400 kilometers and changed the path to avoid communities. Mushers participating in the race will also have to sleep in tents specifically made for Alaska's climate. Glad it still went ahead. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. Stick around. Todd is up next with Nation to Nation. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night. See you back here tomorrow.